It seems that in today's readings across the Hebrew Scriptures, the New Testament, and our Gospel, that we have an odd kind of main character, the humble stone, a good old rock. Now, in and of itself, a stone has no morals, no power, no real agency. It's an object that is formed by nature and that ultimately finds its meaning and its purpose when put in the hands of humans. This reminds me of a stone that we have out in front of our rectory. It's part of the swale. It's not a good stone, nor a bad stone. It exists. And because we have moved it to its particular spot, it is a helpful stone. It directs the water that flows from our drain right to where we need it. We know that in the hands of some, a stone can have incredible destructive power. Look at Stephen, his story this morning in Acts. The stones in their hands became terrible tools. What is it that Stephen said to that council of high priests that caused them to cover their ears and rise up and stone him? He's asked about his views, the law and the prophets, and he begins his speech in relationship with them. He addresses them as brothers and fathers. And he recalls the history of their faith, their people as Israelites. He describes how over and over God's faithfulness carried them through the perils of slavery, the harshness of the desert. He tells of how over and over the people looked back longingly to Egypt. They looked to other gods for comfort, and they let their fear overtake their faith in God's love. Stephen also spoke of the prophets who tried to bring them back to God's love. He asks them, which of the prophets did your ancestors not prosecute? They killed those who foretold the coming of the righteous one, and now you have become his betrayers and murderers. On these words, with a loud shout, Stephen is stoned to death. This is a death that cannot be construed as an orderly capital punishment, but it truly is a lynching. The council was caught up in this universal illusion that we all suffer from. This illusion that your stone throwing is bad, but my stone throwing is good. Somehow the words Stephen spoke were more dangerous and damaging than the rocks that they threw in their eyes. Our readings also cast stones in a helpful light. They are living things, things that can be holy and precious, set aside and grouped together to create something even more beautiful. I've seen a very literal expression of this at the Cathedral of the Transfiguration in Orkney Springs, Virginia. This is their diocesan camp called Shrinemont. There at Shrinemont, they have a beautiful outdoor worship space, in fact, the cathedral seat of the diocese. And this worship space is made up entirely of stones, stones that had been sourced and brought by hand from the surrounding forest. And all together, they had a beautiful altar, a bell, a glorious space for worship. And it is 1 Peter who quotes Isaiah and Hosea, two of these prophets that tried to bring God's people back into relationship he tells them of their stone metaphor. Essentially, Peter is arguing that the church is a gathering of people who come together and create a dwelling place for God, much like that cathedral at Shrinemont. Our cornerstone may be a rock, but we know as the church that our cornerstone, the purpose and reason for our gathering, is Jesus. He is the cornerstone that was rejected at first, but has in fact become the root, the very beginning of this beautiful thing we call church. So on Sunday mornings, we come together and we say, we've done it. Good for us. We have gathered in Jesus' name. We have created this beautiful building, but we have also created the community that inhabits it, which in my opinion is even more beautiful than this building itself. The best way, in my opinion, to see that beauty is to go to coffee hour. I commend it to you truly as a critical part of your spiritual life. Because in the beauty of our parish hall, which we can all admit is less than the beauty of the church, we focus on one another, the beauty that we find in the human souls that come together and make us St. Paul's. But after our worship in this building, after our coffee hour, admiring the beauty of the people in this community, then what? What are we to do? What is the cornerstone, not just of our being or our building, but the cornerstone of our doing? Jesus, our cornerstone. Jesus becomes Jesus Christ because of the cross and the resurrection. This act of mercy that happened once long ago and yet lives on forever. And it is that, mercy. That is the cornerstone of what we do. 1 Peter says, once you were not a people, but now you are God's people. Once you had not received mercy, but now you have received mercy. It is because that we have received mercy that we become God's people. And so any action that we take in our lives, whether an individual or a collective action, it must be merciful if we are to call it Christian. I'd also argue that anything that we call good or godly must also be rooted in mercy. Perhaps the members of the council that stoned Stephen would call their actions good. Maybe some of them would consent that it was an awful scene, but that they would have justified their actions by saying it served a greater good. That the hard stones that they threw that drew blood were somehow made good because of the verbal stones that Stephen cast first. The verbal stones that did not draw blood, but drew out their shame and put it on display. If mercy is the cornerstone of what we do, we have our guide for our Christian lives. If mercy is the root of everything, just as Christ is the root of our gathering, the root of our purpose, then we can indeed proudly call ourselves a Christian community. With mercy at the root, we can live our lives every day, smiling at the baristas, forgiving those who somehow harm us, making amends in our families whenever conflict arises. We can have mercy at the root of our collective actions too. At St. Paul's, we gather together as living stones to feed our community. And our collective actions as a nation, as a city, as a county, if rooted in mercy, can truly be called good, can truly be called Christian. This is the measure by which we call something good. Living our lives rooted in mercy is the key. This is the way that we follow Jesus, because Jesus himself was rooted in mercy. Jesus assures us that even if we forget it sometimes, we know this way. We know the way that Jesus walks because his is the way of mercy. And together with him, we are building a dwelling place open to all people, forgiving of all people, and uniting of all people. This dwelling place, built on the cornerstone of mercy, is God's house, and all are welcome at God's house. Amen.